This pisses me off, man. This is what I get. A brick. Unusable brick. What do I do with? Give mustache to Ariana? Hmm? Fuck me, man. And I can't even exit, bro. Here's your ex, Ariana. You always wanted that. Anyways, it's time to judge Hearthstone because I have an idea. No, Death Knight has to wait. Let's check the complexity of cards because we're printing out Titans, which are the most complicated cards ever that require extra things on the side to read all the, related cards and stuff. Why do we need that? We'll never know, guys. But hey, it's pretty cool now. We're gonna do things that makes no sense with one card. Everyone is gonna play that one card, and it will be very exciting, guys, I swear. So, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try and evaluate complexity of the cards from different expansions. I'm not sure exactly how we're gonna do it, how we're gonna sample it, but let's figure out. Let's get it up to speed, starting from Legacy. Legacy. We left something. We have something here. Pretty sure we have it, except no. Do we not have Knife Juggler? Because I would love that. But we probably don't. It's kind of weird. Knife? So I'm not sure what the fuck Legacy is supposed to do, but this is where we all start with this little pack of cards. And from here we can start figuring out how complicated cards can be. What is the most complicated card of the set? What has the most words? What has the most hidden value and all that stuff? This is gonna be very interesting. I got angry and I made this post where, after seeing this, like, what the fuck am I doing here? We went from cards that you can read into quest lines, colossals, things that literally summon things that you don't understand what it does. Quest lines you don't know what's gonna come next and how difficult it's gonna be, and what the reward is until you actually do it. I believe if you do quest lines now, out of which I have none, no quest lines can be found in my collection because I was sleeping in that period. You do get the final reward, which is fantastic. I don't know if this was from the very beginning, but it's still pretty questionable of, like, how you're gonna get there again. Without playing it, you will never know without actually crafting it. And things like that, like, create complexity to a whole nother level. If you don't know what happens if you play the card, you just don't know. So, we go to Colossals. I think you know what's complicated about Colossals. Let's see how they show it to the player. Colo, okay. Everyone has one. And so, yeah, they summon things. Immediately, Colossal is not being explained, first of all. So it's already very complicated because we literally don't know what the fuck this means. Then it summons this thing. If you do Colossal 2, it will summon the same thing, basically. So that's somewhat reasonable. You at least know what's going to be summoned 4 times. And what is that going to do? So it's somewhat understandable. Then you have 4 rotating effects, which is very recent. Alright, it's the most recent expansion, which is Festival. We have rotating effects. So Mage has one, which is the dispenser. Gains extra effect, which we have no idea what it is. What the? Oh. What if I do this? Will it red? No. Okay. A effect. Or extra. Here you go. Here's how you find it. Without an E. E is just a meme. So you get 5 extra effect cards, which rotate. Not sure why 5, but stupid Borkler that did not create a nightmare scenario for me, but I still don't like it. We literally don't know what these do until we check documentation or whatever. But hey, I'm sure they can explain it at some point, right? They will stop printing this garbage. This is more complicated than Colossals. This is probably maximum complication, because now you just don't know. Now you have no idea. Technically, these are supposed to be effects, right? So you could potentially explain that in there, in that box over here. But the fact that it requires a box in the first place, now we're talking about complexity. The requirement to explain something. Keywords are 0 complexity. Keywords actually simplify things. So we're going to look into the word count. We're going to look into just the uniqueness of the card. And let's see what we can find. This is going to be quite a ride, I would say. I'm not sure how many expansions we're going to be able to cover. I could try and like sample Druid and Neutrals. Because my favorite class. Let's see how Druid looks like on the leaderboard. You know, it feels pretty bad when the only nerf that we receive is to the worst class. Like, that's kind of pretty weird, right? But hey, we just got a confirmation that they still don't know how to nerf cards. They do know how to make things green all of a sudden. And the difference is still a historical difference of 18%, almost 19%, which is almost like a screenshot worthy. Like, we're 0.2 away from absolute insanity, bro. But we're literally just trashing Druid to the point where things are out of control. I don't understand, man. Blizzard needs to chill a little bit harder, I think, because they're not cool enough for me. But hey, isn't it cool that Druid is the worst thing, but is my favorite class? Isn't it? Isn't it cool? Right now, it's favorite class for like 2 years. I'm not sure what I was doing before 2021. What I was playing. I guess we'll find out. Anyways, let's see what kind of complicated cards can we find here. Obviously, we're looking away from anything that with one line of text, with just like damage or whatever. We're looking for something really weird. This actually explains what attack and health is. That is ridiculous. We're going so far back. The first complicated mechanic is mana crystals. You don't know when you get mana crystals, will you get empty mana crystals or not? It's a little bit weird. Like, refreshing mana crystals is also weird. In this case, you gain. Everyone knows after playing a long time how it works, but I think it's a very complicated one that makes things really weird. So you have these empty mana crystals just because of difference between cards. All of a sudden there's a complexity, right? Because you would think like this Nourish is like a buffed version of Wild Growth, but it's not. So basically we're gonna do the exploration state. And let's just summon buttons based on expansion name and give it a score of some kind. So we already found, you know, inconsistency. And inconsistencies are pretty complicated. To me, it always felt like this shitty card is really complicated. Deal damage equal to your hero's attack to a minion. That's a weird one. The reason why this is complicated is it requires two conditions. It requires you to actually have an attack. You're already wasting a card. It's way more complicated than just gaining things. You actually need things. There's a requirement, which is really weird. I'll give it another point. And I think this is right now the most complicated card of the expansion. I mean, whatever the legacy thing is, I'll just call everything an expansion. Thank you very much to make it less complicated. This doesn't count. Yeah, back in the day, we didn't have the ability to see what gets summoned. So if a summoned creature has some kind of effect, we will need to consider that as a complicated thing. Treants are, in fact, very simple things. But they have attack, Treant tag. Luckily, there's no buffs that you can do right now. This summons Treants with Taunt actually has, like, a lot of text. Compared to this thing just deals damage, but this is actually summoning things. It's a legendary, so it's kind of appropriate for it to be complicated. But I'm watching you. There's a limit to madness. Immediately out of all these things, we have weapon removal, which is already very, very complicated. Of like, oh shit, my opponent has to have a weapon for this to be reasonably playable. We're getting 1 point from this one. This is almost unacceptable, and almost like it has more things to cover, but usually you only want to remove one durability, not more, which makes things kind of deeper than I would like to, but I'll just click one time because it's a tech card. You know, I'm just gonna leave it alone. But it's a very, very sad thing to see that out of this page, the one that stands out is this little shit. And that's probably a way to do it, right? What's gonna stand out of a page, if anything? Obviously another tech card, which is Destroy a Murloc. I think it's kind of appropriate. However, it has a rarity of epic. Epic rarity. It's like weird. Do we really deserve to put things... I mean, they're complicated, but they're not going to be played. You know, if a card is going to be played often, very, very often, unlike this crap, you know, that's like supposed to be common and kind of useless. These are very rare cards and supposed to be respected. So makes it gross enough where it's... I think it's complicated of like, why did they not do it properly? This is a very sweet card. But it's actually ridiculously complicated to know what a character is. Well, character is just basically everything. And then you're like, oh, that... everything? Even your opponent's characters? Everything, bro. Everything. I'm okay with this. I'm not gonna click the button. But it's the most complicated card, obviously. In fact, I will click the button because the word character probably should be somewhat of a keyword. Somewhat explained somehow. Because it's very difficult to figure out. Well, what character? What are you talking about, right? But you have to figure those things out somewhere. So it's actually like a very, very generic keyword. And that's supposed to be explained. All of these things have to be explained somewhere, somehow. Yes, you get to explain themselves to yourself. And if we could just collect a, you know, a small keyword list of like things you have to learn if you're a basic Hearthstone player, basically. This is why Hearthstone is is gonna just have a stagnant pool of players because it's never gonna refresh itself to allow new players to exist. It's too complicated already as it is, and there's no simple game mode where people can just chill, you know? Which should be the Tavern Brawl, and Tavern Brawl should offer all sorts of players to just click the button and play the game with the different levels of complexity. And you would have to play against bots if there's no other players, but you would be very happy to see a new player to play with, you know? And maybe you would make friends or some bullshit like that in Tavern Brawl. Tavern Brawl could be upgraded to some crazy extent, it seems like. At least because I care about it so much. What is the most complicated here? Summoning. The summon ability, also a keyword that's kind of scary, I would say. So, summon versus play is basically, there's a difference. And you summon when you pop a death rattle. Transformations don't summon anything. Funny enough. So it's actually a very, very complicated keyword. And I don't know why I'm giving everything to Hearthstone when we have to supposed to share, because I'm doing commentary video and just looking at the cards. I'm not playing the game. We have Enraged thing, which seemingly very simple. We have another tech card. This has the most text. Give a random friendly minion. Okay. Another. There's just a lot of text, but seemingly it's fair. Friendly minion, everything seems fine. At the end of turn seems fine. And the end of your turn, they have to say it. You have to say a lot of things that kind of makes things ugly. In Legacy format, you just have to play with keywords. And I think you have to simplify everything in Legacy to the point where you show the people what's in the future, what's coming from the future. You just introduce them to different keywords. That would be very, very cool if every time a new expansion comes out, a new legacy card comes out to explain the simplicity of the keywords and whatnot. Just a simple card for legacy. And then you could actually have a reason to have basic, what is a classic format, right? Where people just play these simple cards. But I wouldn't recommend classical format. I would recommend an RPG format, which is exactly what was missing in Minecraft. A way to just level up your characters so you know, go to the next expansion and complexity adds on, basically. Spell damage is a complicated one that's not explained. Isn't things explained? Nothing is explained? What do you... Oh, you have to hover. Oh my god. Even I don't know how to summon keywords, bro. That is so annoying. So what... We can summon those bolded texts, right? Hopefully all of them, and nothing is like super complicated here. I think this seems secret? Secret hidden? Until it's... Oh, secret! A secret is a special type of spell, basically. What if I look at the secret? It does say that it's a secret. So I'm happy with that. At least it says that. It has to. So a secret displayed seems fair enough that it's a keyword. It's a little bit weird one, but because it's a type of a card. Normally you wouldn't say like whenever a spell is played or whatever. So I think it's an inconsistency that this text is bolded, but I'll try and look away from weird stuff like this. Lore Walker obviously is the most complicated thing. Whenever a player casts a spell, put a copy into the other player's hand. Basically, it activates for both players, and it is a fun card to craft. It's just weird looking at it, the text. and knowing how ridiculous it is. At least it doesn't, like, copy when something else casts a spell. Or some weird interactions, basically. There's this thing that's kind of annoying. Randomly split damage is like overcomplicated thing. And I will click because this is just overcomplicated text when you just throw 3 bombs randomly. But you need so much text. So I would like spread 3 damage. Mad spread, I would call it. Just mad spread. You actually have to invent new ways of communicating to the player. And, again, establishing on legacy format how the rest of the game is gonna, like, combine those effects. And, like, this is supposed to be alchemical ingredients for the rest of the game. And Titans, I think they break a lot of rules when you look from that perspective. So this is a little bit weird one. This one is weird one, because, like, the first minion you play each turn costs 1 less. The reason why it's weird is because, first of all, after you play this, it was a minion, you played it, so you will not get the discount. So we're already, like, weirded out, like, you have to wait a turn, and then next turn, the first minion, if this survives. It's sort of easy to understand, but whenever you look into this card, you have to remind yourself how it works. Because it doesn't, like, give you a coin or something. It doesn't have, like, immediate effect. So I would say it's actually complicated. And already in Legacy format, we have somewhat like a weird thing. 50% chance, that's very, very annoying. What makes this card complicated is just the fact that it has a weird chance to do a very big effect. So you don't know how to play this card, or if you want to play this card. Back in the day, it was pretty playable, because it was at the end of your turn, and card draw was like ridiculously OP. But because you allow your opponent to kill this, now it doesn't have it. Potentially, it doesn't have an effect. And when it potentially doesn't have an effect, the card gets obliterated. So now it's actually, like, very complicated. Again, I will look away from complicated legendaries unless they're ridiculously stupid as well. I will look away, thank you. It's just one card after all. And you need to craft it. And I don't even have these losers, basically, in my collection. Because they're terrible. Random legendary minion. We're getting into a territory where we don't even know what we're gonna get. We have no idea. It could be anything. Legendary still means absolutely anything. There's no specified or, like, shrunk down pool where you sort of understand what you're gonna get to your hand. And this is called, well, randomness complexity. You don't want to overcomplicate the game with randomness as well, where crazy things can happen and they can get out of control and the game becomes unfair. You know, that's pretty bad for the game, unfortunately. Small randomness could happen, but, like, giant randomness, the better be specified some kind of way. Otherwise, the card will not be playable simply because it's too random. It is a newly printed legacy card. We don't get to know when it was released or whatever, but... And it's a legendary, so... Again, I will excuse me, princess. Does returning from the battlefield feels complicated? A little bit, because you can damage the card, and you return it to your hand, and it loses all the buffs and all the damage. This is not something you should just take it for granted. This is complicating the effect. And you can reuse the battle cry of the card. Obviously, you return something to your hand, it heals, it cleans off, it will pick up new abilities or whatever. Or old, I don't know. That's fine. Then you know what the battlefield is. This has to be fairly simple, right? Besides what I just said. You can also return itself. That's kind of a weird effect, but and it's actually like playable to this day because battle cries are getting out of control, so you could actually slot this card. Maybe that's what's complicated, that it's fucking playable still. I would say it's complicated because the effect is so like timeless. Like, how many timeless cards do you see here? I don't see any. Crazed Alchemist? Are you sure about that? Crazed Alchemist is complicated, and we're definitely clicking this, because there's a weird interaction where you have a buffed attack or health, even by the neighboring dog, basically. If you buff attack with the dog, it will still translate into health and get buffed one more time anyways. So even like temporary buffs can be flipped into existence basically and will be sucked in by a monster that has, you know, temporary buffs. And also it's very complicated as a card to know when you should add a Crazed Alchemist into your deck when you have healthy enough creatures to just be flipped around and smacking your opponent. It's a tough one. Is can't attack very complicated? I don't think so. Is taunt complicated as a keyword? Is can't attack a keyword though? No. Fair enough. Spell damage only appears here, and what about the kobolds? I saw him. Alright. So that's fair. Then you have can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. Somehow Doomsayer feels really, really complicated to me. Really. But it's probably because it creates such an effect where, like, how are you going to remove this? Or everything will die. So it's complicated for your opponent. But if you don't know the feeling that your opponent gets, just the feeling alone can be complicated of the card. That is crazy, right? Just the thing that you can annoy your opponent with this card, just the idea that you can do that. That's complicated, just to understand what the impact of the card is. Wow. That is crazy sometimes. Just, you can read the card and sort of understand what it does, but you don't really understand what it does unless you play it properly. Wow. Also, you can buff the attack of this card, so it becomes really dangerous to try and kill, which is so cool. Like, in Priest, you can, like, not just flip, but you can turn health into also the attack buff. And all of a sudden, Doomsayer is gonna suck in monsters like a black hole, or your opponent's hand damage that they have from hand, or removals. So that's pretty crazy stuff. Like, you have to think deeper. You have to think that your opponent might not have all the tools to be able to deal with a 7/7 that wants to kill everything on board. Damn, bro. Another super complicated card that I missed to talk about is obviously Wild Pyro. Still playable, and it just haunts everyone's lives forever because it's just like, you know, the Doomsayer, but it's a very active effect. It just complicates the game, right? Like, tremendously. Because you need spells, you need to build around it a little bit. So you also, like, you have this blanket requirement where you have to build around a card a little bit to make it comfortable in your deck. And that's a tough one, that's a tough. Here's another tech card that doesn't even really look like a tech card. Because it looks like it has normal stats, first of all. Blood Knight. You can actually blanket this card, or you can tech against your opponent. It's the most complicated, but no, it's not. It's not the most complicated. This is a weird one, bro. It just swaps and still survives. It's really weird card. And you have to wait until the start of your turn, so again, not immediate effect. Just, no one would be able to play this card, but people would want to figure it out of how it would work, and if it would work, and if they could defend this 3-drop somehow to summon a giant minion from their hand. It's a cool card that pisses me off, basically. So, because it's too weird. It's too complicated to actually defend something that only has 3 health. Way too complicated. You're wasting 3 mana, unless you have the board and you want to board lock your opponent. But then it's very complicated because you had to play minions to have the board. You can empty your opponent's board and then play this, but you still have to hope that they don't have 3 damage from hand. So overall, there's too much hope for this thing to even be playable, which makes things complicated because fuck this card with a lot of text that is not playable, right? Another complicated effect is a drawback effect, where you can give your opponent certain things or lose certain things. And you don't really know how powerful mana crystals are to be given. You have to actually do the math and be like, oh, in 10 turns, if I summon this on 3, technically my opponent gets like 6 extra crystals, 6 extra mana over time. So we're just technically getting a charge effect, but it gets even more complicated, which warrants a fucking click of a button. When your opponent has 10 mana, they don't get more mana. You ain't given a mana crystal. You can't. Just things cannot go above 10 mana even if you get mana crystals. And nothing happens when you do that. So it's actually a useful finisher card if you need one, right? For your aggro deck that doesn't care of what your opponent has or what it does, as long as it's dying next turn. So that's pretty good. Pretty good complexity, but, you know, now we're looking at 14 points and the end of the video, basically, because that's how long it takes for me to explain all this shit. What makes this card complicated is a very weird thing, where she wants to kill herself and turn herself into an imp, even if she has 1 health left. It's complicated because it's sad. It's just sad. The story of this creature is very sad, and it's a 1/1 already, so it's like, why are you destroying yourself when you could be healed? It just hurts, alright? It is what it is, guys. You wouldn't think about it, but it's complicated. This shit is complicated. The funny thing about this card, and a little bit sad that it targets all the enemies, which is, again, not really specified. What's the difference between enemy minion, enemy hero is kind of obvious. But you get to hit both, which is annoying. So it's already too random. But what makes this complicated is the fact that it's a reoccurring effect over on a rare card, of legacy rare card. Now it's the same as this, right? No, you don't lose any health. You actually gain so much more tempo if you can just keep this thing alive. It just keeps generating tempo. It doesn't have to attack into anything. It can do its own thing. It can be buffed and attack the enemy hero while it's just generating general tempo. It's very slow, it's very shitty, but it's still better than just stats, you know? All of a sudden, we have invented something that is better than stats. It's a reoccurring effect, doesn't require you to sacrifice any health in any way. That's pretty crazy. It's kind of similar to this if it grew both stats at the same time. So I'm going to give another point. Obviously, a much more powerful effect is constant growth. Just like I've said, you just play a card, and it can be any card. Again, you need a little bit of a blanket for this thing, and it's one of my favorite cards, because that's my playstyle, is to grow out of control, steal the board, and just grow it against my opponent. Look at my muscles, how fast I'm growing, bro. Now, can you guys tell what's complicated about mind control tech? Because it's a very, very terrifying card. Which is exactly why. You always think, every time you play more than four and more minions, does he have mind control tech? No, please don't! Probably mind control tech is the most notorious card in Kriparian's videos when he used to play Arena. Is the scariest card, bro. Eventually got banned, how scary it is. Jesus Christ, man. That is something. Funny enough, I want to remind people that I have the experience of watching other Hearthstone people, and all experience matters. Just a reminder. Everything you put in your brain actually matters in the end. Unless you don't want to express yourself. Then fuck you. This is actually also ridiculously complicated, because the most gotcha moment is when you attack into something and it immediately gains Wind Fury and it can attack again. So your opponent has to kill it, or it can just gobble up 2 creatures. And your opponent has to... Also, the increased complexity of, like, your opponent has to carefully place minions that don't have low health and attack. Like one attack and 3 health creature, and then a 7 attack and 3 health creature, and they both would die. They just both dies to this thing. You don't get to save your 1/3, unfortunately. Even if 1/3 has a taunt, it doesn't save your 7/3. Which is kind of crazy, man. Wait, what? Until he gets nerfed. Then he will be raging even more, I assume. Then you have permanent buff cards that also buff health, which is also a very complicated thing that people don't understand until it happens. Alright? You damage something, but if it has a buff, you remove the buff, but the health stays the same. And also, this is a permanent effect, so it will be active while this card is here. It's very difficult to wrap your head around this, but, you know, it is what it is. And so every time you play a pirate, especially ones with charge, you have to recalculate everything. It makes things somewhat complicated. And especially when you requires special type of cards to be buffed, so you need to figure out which one is a pirate, which one is a murloc, which one is a mech. So now, which one is hobgoblin? It's a new tribe. Here's another tech card that overcomplicates everything, and they're just like generally scary cards that have been haunting the game for way too long. And we have to accept that it's actually ridiculously insane that it does that. This is unplayable, so it doesn't haunt the game. And nobody cares, basically, if it's not played too much as a tech card. It's weird to have cards like that. So you have to know specifically 7 or more attack will get hunted by the BGH or whatever. Every top tier player has to know these scary cards and what your opponent can do, basically. And that's a little bit of a brain brain-rotting exercise, I would say. I don't like remembering stuff. I just want to maximize my value in general. But anytime you build a deck, you have to actually consider whether something is 6 attack or 7 attack, which is the funniest thing of why the meme was born. You know what I'm talking about. This is actually good stats because 7 attack would be detrimental to this card. It's unbelievable. There's a playable card that also haunts me personally, and it's a fucking Cult Master, bro. Yeah. The cult never ends. Drawing cards is amazing. Is Cult Master really in the game or not? I don't think it's in the game anymore. I think it's dead. Because it's like... But until it existed, while it existed, it was such a cool card. Such a thing that you kind of questioning it, like, is this playable though? Is it? Because it kind of is. Card draw is always playable, and you don't want to rotate it out, away. Well, I'm not going to check card draw right now, but I do miss this card, I'm not going to lie. I do miss it. It's also undead. Why did you rotate that? Why did you kick it out of my home? It's such a cool card. Who complained about it, anyways? I guess it's complicated because, like, yes, I want this card really badly. This is a very complicated tech. Got buffed. Was actually played for quite a while. But taunts were kind of out of favor eventually. I would say this is complicated because I like trading efficiently so much, and it's like, the question is like, is this not useful at all? But that's fine. This is being played quite a lot until recently, maybe like recent 5 years or 4 years. It was power crept, which simply because you have to play cards. That's how it was kind of pushed away. And stats mean nothing anymore. But back in the day, this was like pretty decent. And I don't think it adds too much complexity at this point. We're looking at big cards now. Whenever you cast a spell. Yeah, that's the whenever part of the casting a spell. You need to know what happens first, the spell or this effect. I believe the spell happens first. Even I don't know exactly. It seems like the spell happens first. And because the buffs matter, right? So in Druid you have a very simple buff to the board, and I don't think it buffs the creature that it summons afterwards, basically. Which is actually, that is annoying. We just found something really fucking weird. Like, it doesn't actually explain the order of things, and I think that's almost like 2 points for how weird this card is. I'll try and look away, but damn, it's disgusting. This one is pretty weird, too. I don't think there is anything that deals damage to everything besides Pyromancer. This does it in a completely different way. It's a death rattle where now your opponent gets to have quite a bit of control over this creature as well, but it has taunt, so I hope that helps to defend what exactly. It's almost like it's bad design because it has taunt, but not really, because you want to clear your opponent's minions. So it's just another one of those very complicated, how do I play this card? Cards, you can't just slot it into your deck just because you need Borklers. You're also not supposed to have your own minions on the board. You're supposed to be losing on the board. And if that happens, maybe it's a useful card. I don't know. I never tried to play it because it's so complicated. You see what I'm talking about? And ETC is basically an invitation. We get ETC so many times that it's probably not a coincidence that the most complicated card of all, the one that doesn't tell you anything whatsoever of how it works, and warrants 2 points of complexity, is goddamn ETC, despite being a legendary, bro. Despite, I'm not gonna look away. It's a very weird glitch, basically, in the Matrix, so not only we give 2 points, we also glitch Jesus a little bit. Alright? Funny thing about this thing is just generally a very, very complicated effect, but things get so complicated when you realize you can copy your opponent's minions. They play a giant minion with some kind of recurring effect or whatever. You do the same exact thing. And maybe you remove your opponent's creature, now you just fucking mind-controlled the shit out of them. So, this is one of the most played cards in WoW Hobbs. Is a person that picks up all the complicated cards because they look so fucking interesting in your hand of like, which one do I play now? Right? So if you want complexity, WoW Hobbs got you covered, basically. To some extent. But maybe he needs a tutorial like this as well. To remind him of something. I like the complexity of Gurubashi. It's another one of my cool pick cards. I believe it was buffed from 7 to 8 health. It's not gonna be played anymore, apparently. Again, we don't get to see it. I guess if it doesn't say core, it's just legacy of like being thrown into trash. Which is kind of weird. But it's not. Because like, the Voodoo Doctor is played in core, and it says legacy anyways. Just the whole fucking existence of Legacy set is pretty complicated. I'm not gonna lie. I'm getting a little bit thrown away. But, yeah, is Gurubashi complicated? Sort of. It can complicate, again, your opponent's turn. Because if they cast a shitty board clear, they will buff this creature. You can actually solidify your board a little bit that way. But you also might want to have, like, ways to activate this as well. And there's not a lot of ways to do it. So blanketing this and slotting it into your deck is actually, like, really complicated stuff. There was a deck, there was a warrior deck, Enrage Warrior, basically. And so it obviously slots in because it kind of enrages itself. But overall, it probably has a few more implications that we can see, and even it's too complicated for me to see, basically, so it is what it is, man. Leroy was a little bit of a madness, I would say, because he was nerfed, so it already you can sense complexity based on nerfs alone, and unfortunately, it's like being abused by Shadow Step and all that stuff, which is the actual thing that should have been nerfed, I would say. Shadow Step idea in general. Or Shadow Step could like remove keywords or something like that, so it doesn't have charges. Or text as a whole, man. that would be bad. It could keep Battle Cry, and that's it. And you can cry about it. Leroy would just lose that ability. I mean, it's weird. It's a little bit weird that you can just smash with Leroy, but it is a combo. Can't complain too much. It's just everyone complained about Shadow Step for so long. Is it here? We can sense... Honestly, the funny thing is, Leroy is completely fine, but I can sense that this card exists, so it's fucking complicated. Why did you do that? Wow, I love this shit. This is so fucking ridiculous. We can sense the existence of other cards that I don't care about because it's not my class. It's not my classroom. Someone smells in the other classes. Yeah, basically, if the actual problem with these cards is that they synergize very, very well with certain cards. That's it. You have weapon synergy for the first time in forever. We have it. Well, not really, because we have the legendary that buffs the weapon. But this is another thing that only kind of rogue can do, is keep summoning weapons and use this card consistently. So, there's nothing complicated about this, I just want to vomit that only rogue can use this card, because we already had Shadow Step in our mouths. We don't need deeper. Don't put it... I'm full. Yeah. This is a weird one. It's a very weird one. It's like... It's very good if it does something. Ridiculously good. Was played as another tech card. But this is a very complicated tech card, which is not actually being played to the point where it's very scary. But you might not be able to play your Doomsayer. And honestly, I'm pretty mad right now. Why is there a Doomsayer counter in the game? That's pretty... I don't know, man. I don't know. It's pissing me off. Let's remove premium cards. Fuck that shit. We have been staring at too many premium cards. Well, I was just able to remove them. I'm sorry, guys. I'm very inconsiderate. Alright, where were we? Kodo. This seems complicated, but this is just obvious. Because it's bad. It's just a bad card. I mean, in Arena, it's a little bit complicated. What's actually complicated is stealth mechanic in general, bro. That one is crazy. There's nothing really complicated about it, right? Because it's just another keyword that does things. It's pretty weird, because, like, you can't target it with anything. It removes stealth when it deals damage. The funny thing is, there's a very complicated interaction with stealth minions. If you give stealth to something like... Where is the fucking thing? Knife Juggler. What's gonna happen? He's gonna lose stealth after using the effect. Immediately, basically, if you summon a creature to give this stealth, it will immediately lose the effect, which is kind of sad. And you realize that you don't really know how stealth works anymore past that point. So if the creature deals damage, it cannot have stealth. It loses it. And then there's stealth for one turn type of things. And you can buff creatures in stealth, and your opponent cannot interact with those stealth minions that easily. So it creates a whole nother level of complexity already, just because a keyword is kind of weird. This one is weird, and it lasts for a long time whenever you feel like keeping the minion. You keep the threat until you're ready to do something with it. It's a weak card, but overall we're talking about the keyword itself, right? Because if you spend 5 mana to summon some not flexible thing, then you're just still gonna have to trade like with a normal minion. But otherwise, it's still a big deal to have something that your opponent cannot interact with. Very weird stuff. And in fact, Elder Scrolls Legends took this mechanic and amplified to a whole nother level where there's a whole lane. You can basically give stealth for one turn to every single minion you play, which makes things so fucking satisfying, and it pisses me off. It almost warrants another point of complexity, because this just kind of disappeared. It just disappeared. This keyword, which is complicated, but at least it gives healthy complexity to the game, and not what we're gonna see in the future expansions we're gonna discuss. Because I can't wait. I can't wait, to be honest. Gadgets on Auctioneer creates so many stupid scenarios where you can just infinitely draw cards, and I think infinite effects are supposed to be kind of restricted from the game, especially when they draw infinite amount of cards from hand. So you play a card from hand and you keep drawing cards, and it creates unhealthy effects. And Miracle Rogue has been feeding off this dude for such a long time. It pisses me off. Again, you can sense it by which card got nerfed. You can sense the problem. Yeah. Not accept. Technically, yeah. Yeah, you're just like ETC, to be honest. In fact, this card is that much more complicated, but ETC took the cake first, so unfortunately. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Gilbin. You know what? I'll give a bonus point, because the name sucks. What is the ETC? Gelbin, boys. It's almost like Goblin, it feels like. And then Mechatorque. What? Your name sucks, bro. And honestly, I have to give a point if there's a lot of shitty names. Or if I look into a complicated card, it also has a complicated name. Yeah, nobody's gonna play your shit. Is the High Inquisitor White Mane one of those cards? Yes. Yes, it is. It gets at least 1 point of complexity. Summon all friendly minions. It's a new card, technically. Newish. And, it probably is, like, double complicated. Honestly, I don't even know how powerful this card is. That's how complicated it is. I don't even know anything about this, because you have to sacrifice your creatures this turn. There's no, like, combo that I've seen that would work with this. Nothing makes sense to me. It's kind of weird. I don't like this card at all. Even though it's a legendary. And, I mean, I like the complexity all the time. But it doesn't seem like it would work out. Oh boy. Oh boy. I think we can all agree that Sylvanas was overplayed and overly complicated. Anytime it comes down on the board and you have minions, your brain just starts melting. And that's a tough one. Is this complicated? It wasn't played, but it's kind of difficult to know why, but not really. Because for 6 mana, you get 4 points of tempo. Congratulations, bro. You like that? You like 4 points of tempo for 6 mana? I don't think so. Even without the effect, it would not be played. I don't know why it's a legendary. It's annoying. Another, endless effect. It's kind of annoying, but I don't think it's complicated. This one's really fucking weird. Really weird. But is it complicated, though? It's a reoccurring Borkler. We don't have that shit in the game. And this very, very unique effect, I would say. Because it's such a unique effect, it would create so much complexity in the game. Because you never know what's gonna happen if you can't kill it. Like, how do you deal with this thing? Can your opponent just abuse it endlessly? Well, no, because you create complexity in all sorts of ways. And do you play this to kill your opponent because it's low at health? It's like, it deals damage to your opponent's hero, so you could use this as reach. But how? It's kind of crazy card, I'm not gonna lie. Just too random. I know it's a beast, but it's just too random. And everything that's too random, like, I'm sorry, bro. And too, like, big of an effect. I don't care how big this card is. Like, you don't know if you want to play it, that's the problem. The problem is not like, oh, is it on average, like, good? Is it, No, it's just too random. Like, why should I play something that I don't know what happens when I do it? I just don't. So I'm just gonna leave you alone to die in peace. Don't worry about it. I don't know what you're supposed to do in my society, bro. Summon a random beast? Oh, is it gonna be a cat or a dinosaur? Let's find out. How fun is that? It's both, actually. Actually, let's go, baby. So here's a very interesting card. The Stormwind Champion. Very, very favorite card by me. Because I love tempo. And you have no idea how powerful this is. It comes down on the board, it buffs everything. It keeps on buffing everything no matter how you trade and what you summon. You can summon taunts to defend this, the taunt is gonna get buffed. This gets really weird, because it's not a 7/7, it's not an 8/8, it's a whole fucking army. It's a beast, man. Now that's what I want to summon for a beast. And I at least know what it does, and I'm so happy about it. And it's like the cleanest thing, but it's still complicated, regardless of how clean it is. We don't... we... It's weird. It's weird. Is Ragnaros complicated? Yes, because it can't attack. It's kind of like Doomsayer effect, where it's just gonna slowly destroy things. And because it's like too random, and wasted so many games, we have to put it in almost all of these somewhat complicated, but this stuff I can ignore. This is just unplayable garbage that I don't know why Blizzard wants to force it in our decks to this day with quests. This is absolutely mad complicated, because not only just a complicated effect of like, do I want to heal myself or do I want to set my opponent to 15? Also, it breaks the game sometimes, because your opponent can have 100 health and you just set it them to 15. So it's almost like unplayable nonsense, which warrants 2 points of complexity yet again. Is the third card that was able to squeeze that, because it just kind of breaks the game, unfortunately. And it's too weird. Too weird, and it created a lot of, like, combos, like, no one likes Freeze Mage. Back in the day is just the dumbest thing. And then you have Ysera, which is also one of those ETC moments. What is a dream card? Excuse me? What is it? Shouldn't they exist somewhere? Shouldn't they be in some kind of class that has dream cards or whatever, dream package? No? You just give me a dream card? You could give me 2 dream cards if they're, like, average. I wouldn't mind. I just want to know what they are. You will find out after crafting this stupid fucking legendary or watching YouTube video tutorials. Fuck your shit, bro. No. Nuh-uh. We're here for experience and not answer questions of, like, how this card works. Deathwing is on a whole nother scale of complexity. But you do discard your hand. But it's like literally a finisher move that you may or may not want to have in your deck. And it gets even more complicated if you can somehow dodge the discard entirely. Like, cheat this thing out somehow. But it's not gonna happen most of the time. So, it's literally the end game card. If everything fails, you might have Deathwing, and Crypt might cry about it. But do we give 2 points for this thing? Is it really that bad? You know? Because you just let it... You know when to play this card, so I don't think it's that crazy to get 2 points. I don't think it breaks the game. I think it's just very weird and cool at the same time. Sea Giant. I think all the giants are ridiculously complicated, and they just kind of create a weird situation, especially Molten Giant, because it got nerfed and unnerved at the same time. And it's like, what? For all the damage your hero was taken. I think it was unnerved, but it changes the way it works now. Now your hero has to take damage. No? I think it did change. But kind of not really, because she would take damage anyways. It's weird, man. It's weird. I think... I'm not sure how to treat Molten Giant. because I don't have the recent experience for it to be able to determine if this is... How interesting is this? Because probably it's just a normal card. It looks like a normal card to me at this point. The thing is, see, the Mountain Giant is like the least complicated one out of all these, but because the cost changes so radically, I'm gonna give points to all of them, and on top of that, these guys who can go down to 0 mana, well, they're on a whole nother level of insanity, I would say. The 0 mana cards. Because back in the day, you would be scared of, like, uh-oh, if I attack my opponent, a Molten Giant is gonna pop out of their ass. And that's annoying. But hey, at least Legacy format was still pretty spicy. Thank you guys for watching. Apparently I can only do one expansion at a time. We'll see. This is Legacy, this is pretty chunky place, but I'm scared now. I'm very scared. Because things are gonna get more and more complicated. My brain might explode. See you guys next time. See you guys until my brain explodes, I think.